episode of Science Radio. My name is Jesse, and I'm joined today by Jared. G'day, Jared.
Hello, Jesse.
And Zanita.
Hello, Jesse.
And it is a special day.
Jinx. Oh, it doesn't at the same time.
That was wonderful. So today, guys, we don't have one specific topic. Today, we get to do something which became almost an accidental tradition for us. Our annual, yearly sort of look back, retrospective, and sort of wrap up for the year. This is our big episode where we get to look back at the year that's been, some of the highlights of said year, and then get to look forward to the year in front of us. So 2025 is almost over. Christmas is upon us. The pre-Christmas panic is slowly setting in, for me at least. There's lots happening for all of us in all of our personal lives, not to mention our professional lives. Before we get into it, though, I'd just like to ask, this is a very broad question, so answer it however you would like. What has 2025 been like for the both of you?
2025 has felt less exciting. I feel like my day-to-day probably has been less exciting because I've had an injury a lot of the year and it's taken away me being able to do a lot of things I love. So when I look back at 2025, I'm like, there's been a bunch of awesome things that have happened, but the day-to-day has felt less exciting. And so I think that has put a dull tone on my overall year. But yeah, still really thankful for when I look back over the year. Like, it wasn't a year where I had major struggles. It was just kind of a year where I was pottering along. Yeah, that's probably how I'd summarize my year.
Did you move again this year? Or because you've moved
I've
so
moved.
many times, it's hard to keep up.
I've moved many times.
Yeah.
I think I've moved 5 times in the last 3 years.
Oy.
Yeah, the Gold Coast is crazy. But they've all been great places. This is probably my least favourite because we've got high rises going up on either side, so it's like a constant brrr. But I have an awesome housemate, so that makes up for it.
The phrase or words that come to mind is freight train or maybe bullet train would be more appropriate. Fast and furious 2025 has felt very busy, very jam-packed. Not that all the other years weren't busy, but this has seemed to go so quickly that it's hard to even, like when we started preparing for this episode, it was like, let's look back on the year, thinking about what happened in 2025. I'm like, what did happen in 2025? I've been on a bullet train, just like life has been flashing past the windows. It's felt a bit like that. Good things have happened, milestones ticked off, family birthdays and my daughter's first year at school and things like that have been really exciting for us. But because of that, there's been so many events and so many kids' birthday parties on the weekend and all sorts of other firsts for our family. And it's just been frenetic. It has not stopped and it's not feeling like it's slowing down. I feel like I'm slowing down because the year's approaching the end, but the year seems to just be whizzing by and every weekend we still have three different appointments to be at or people to see or things to do. So yeah, it's felt very rushed and crazy.
Yeah. I think if I were to describe this year, it would be growing pains in a way. So as some people who know me will know, I have been building a house for the last few years, and that's a pretty stressful experience. I also have she's not a newborn anymore. She's almost 2, little toddler. And so this year was also a year of a lot of firsts, going to daycare for the first time, first birthday, new work environment. My wife got a new job. I've been doing a new commute sort of schedule that I have had to get used to whilst trying to keep all the plates spinning, landscaping, home maintenance, home improvement, all the things that you have to do when you're a first home owner, and as well as the stresses of finance and, being a little bit more stretched than when we were just renters and all that sort of stuff. So lots of new challenges, and I don't think I'm quite on top of it all quite yet. But I'm sure any day now. Lots of great things, though. I mean, yeah, my little girl is growing up, and that's wonderful, and really blessed that she's happy and healthy and growing and doing all the things that a little toddler is supposed to be doing. But it is tiring, as Jared well can attest to. And yeah, so very mixed, but it has been a good and a bad year, to be honest. So yeah. All right. Well, hey, this is our look back, our retrospective episode on the year that was. And we're going to focus in, sometimes we focus in on the podcast episodes, but this year I decided to take a slightly different tack. And let's look back at the stuff that we've written, because that's what we spend most of our time doing, working in our own writing and in the writings of other people. And Signs of the Times is really at its core about that content, and content that's helpful, content that's spiritual, content that is, speaking to current events. We cross a lot of categories in our work. And so I just wanted to take a few moments in this episode to look back at some of that written content, some of which actually did end up as podcast episodes, some of which didn't. But what articles and what pieces of content are we most proud of, things like that. So that's the very first place I'd like to start. And I'll throw it to Jared to start off with. Which article that you wrote in 2025, Jared, are you the most proud of?
This is always a difficult question because I've written a few things and they've given me mixed feelings. The anxiety versus abundance article that I wrote was probably the most personal of the articles I've written this year. So I had to delve into some of my own experiences, and we actually had a podcast episode, I think, on that, Jesse. Yeah. And I really enjoyed recording that episode because, again, we went to the story beneath the story, or we got to expand that. But the premise was, I was wrestling through Jesus' teachings of, don't worry about tomorrow because, God's got you, basically. And what it looks like to live with that as a mindset, and to push back some of the anxiety. I mean, I've just shared, hey, how's the year been for you? It's been crazy. It's been full on. It's very easy to get overwhelmed by that then. And I've been attempting in that season that I was writing that article and since to find, I guess, a different way to live with an abundance mindset. We did cover that quite a bit in the podcast episode, so if people want to check that out, they can. The one I'm most proud of in terms of maybe impact or importance of social sort of topics that need to be talked about is with regards to the domestic violence article that I was able to write. These ones come along and sometimes they're related to a date or a time or a special campaign. And so we cover those as Signs of the Times. We want to know that we're speaking into things that are happening in society at the time. However, and so sometimes those can feel a bit mundane, oh, it's Father's Day again. Let's write about fathers. And you're sort of forcing it a little bit, like, why do we have to do this? Let's bang it out. But with that one, I'm aware that the issue of domestic violence is bad in Australia. It's a passion of mine to see, more done in that space. And to write about that was very useful, I think, not only to remind me of why it's important and some of the research that I was able to do, some of the comments and quotes I was able to find, listen to some podcasts, read some articles from academics who are dealing with this space and discovering more about how that sort of stuff works. I think that's in terms of there's different ways to be proud of something. That one, I'm proud that Signs of the Times is able to delve into these very difficult social issues sometimes and to not only give a faith-based perspective, but a good ethical human perspective, a good, contribution to society. How can we live better? How can we support our neighbors to live better? How can we educate our children so that some of these social ills, social evils don't continue to perpetuate in our societies. And, you know, as I reflected in the article, as a kid, the Australia I saw, the family that I saw, domestic violence wasn't necessarily something I thought could happen in our demographic, in our suburb, in our city, in our state, in our country. You know, it's just foreign to me. And then the older I've gotten, the more I've learned, the more people I've met who have experienced some of these things. It's prevalent, it's everywhere. And we're not necessarily very good at as a country at acknowledging, facing up to that and doing something about it. We'd much prefer to pretend that it doesn't exist. So for me, that was a personal exercise of saying, hey, this is a problem. And for those who read it and hopefully enjoyed it, who can share it, who can read it in the future, can go, hey, it brings a little bit of awareness to them and maybe they can think differently about this issue rather than just ignoring it and hoping it goes away.
Yeah. I love that we have an opportunity to have a strong Christian perspective on some of these social issues. I think that it's a wonderful thing to be able to look at the gospel and see how it works itself out in real life and the way that it works out in some of these really tough social issues. Yeah.
And to have a hopeful perspective, because these issues have been happening for so long, and so some people can get quite discouraged. Is this ever going to end? This is going to keep going, but there is hope.
I hope that's hope. Excuse the pun. I hope that's our DNA at Signs, is to have a hopeful perspective. We talk about it a lot internally as a team. You know, yes, there are tragic and terrible things happening all around us in the world. The reality is we have great hope in Jesus, and some of these things that are happening that sometimes feel hopeless, a lot of people might choose to say, well, it just has always happened, it will always happen, so just stay away from it and there's nothing you can do about it. But for us, it's more like, well, no, we know it doesn't have to be that way. That's not how God designed the world to be. That's not how God intends relationships to be. There's a better way. And we have hope that not only here on earth, but one day, you know, this will be solved. Some of these problems will be solved. In the meantime, I would hope that we're encouraged to be the answer to some of these problems, to make sure it doesn't get passed down through the generations, that make sure it doesn't happen. So we educate our children so they're not perpetuating it or the victims of it. You know, there's an emphasis for us to be a generation that can stamp this out rather than just saying, hey, it's always happened, let's just let it keep happening. And I think that's really important.
Wonderful. Zanita?
Yeah, so a lot of the pieces that I work on are people's stories and profiles. So I'm going to answer to that. It's not in 1916, this happened. But one of the ones that I'm the most proud of is one called The Mothers of the Mothers. And it was a series of interviews that I did with mothers of the mothers. So essentially people who have gone through the various stages of motherhood. And I think typically when we write Mother's Day articles or Father's Day articles, and this isn't a hate because I know you're about to talk about fatherhood through a toddler's eyes, but we think about, oh, who has kids? And we get them to talk about that. And that's great because there's a whole group of people who that is serving and helping and encouraging. But I think we don't often think of the old women in their rocking chairs who have gone through the toddler stage, the teenage stage, the adult stage, and I guess reflected on that. And so it was really awesome to go and visit a bunch of grandmas and talk to them about their perspective and their experience, because so many of them are still relevant to mothers today, and they just had so much wisdom to offer, and they all had such different stories and such different experiences. Like some were thrown into motherhood, some had 12 children, some had one. Like they just had such a vast array of experiences. But I just found myself, I'm not even a mother, but I was like, I feel so encouraged and even equipped to just go into motherhood in the future with some of these perspectives and some of these gems. And so that was one that I really enjoyed doing. And I thought, yeah, it was just really interesting and valuable. Yeah.
I loved how that you're able to bring out some of the honesty of what it's like to be a mother. there's one in particular I remember you writing about of the mother and father-in-law being not very supportive or being very negative. And there was another story of immigrant family as well. So many different varied stories that touched on some of the things that just some of the harsh realities of motherhood and raising a family and a lot of the personal relationship sort of dynamics. Really, really cool. I wish that we could have gone more. You had to. I remember talking to you about it, going, "Man, I have to cut it down because there's so much here."
Yeah, I really had to scale back.
Real challenge.
Because I probably interviewed each woman maybe for even 20 minutes or something, and one of those interviews could have been a whole thing.
Yeah.
And we obviously just had to cut out a lot, but
Yeah.
I guess I tried to keep in there things that were sort of different.
I'd have to say, Zanita, you have a gift for getting people to tell their stories and interviewing them. And what is it you love so much about telling these kind of personal stories, like getting people to share their, whatever the topic is, the angle that you find or the story that you pull out of them? What is it that you love about doing that? Because it seems to be a passion of yours.
I think the people with really amazing stories typically are the ones that are quiet. They're not the ones saying, listen to my story, I've got a story, publish this. They're the ones that are kind of sitting in the corner. And I think it's a really cool experience it's like squeezing orange juice. It's like getting the goodness and the juice out of them, because I think there's so many people out there who have experienced really crazy things, have amazing insights, amazing stories, but they don't necessarily think that that's true about them. A lot of people don't think that their life is anything amazing, or they don't see the gold in their struggles or what's come out of that. And I just love that journey of, I think everyone has an element of that in their lives and has something that they can impart wisdom on. And I love finding that. It's like a treasure hunt to me, because I think it's so awesome to see how everyone can impact someone through their story and through their experiences. And if we don't share people's stories and unpack their stories, then that can just be missed, which I think is sad. So it's a treasure hunt. It's an exciting thing to do for me. Yeah, Story Scout.
So for me, my pick for this category is I chose this one because it's a bit of a departure from what I'm comfortable with. So I am the guy who is much more at home going, in 1916, such and such was born to a family far away. And I do love writing about history and social issues, what's going on currently in culture. That is sort of much more my comfort zone. But for Father's Day, decided to write a story about my young child. It's called Fatherhood Through a Toddler's Eyes. And it was something that I admire you about, Jared, is how at home you seem to have become, talking about stuff much more personal. And so I really wanted to stretch myself a bit and go into that zone a bit and write something a bit more personal. Was a great experience for me because it was an opportunity, an excuse to reflect on myself and my journey as a young dad and some of the struggles, but also to reflect on some of the joys, some of those inconspicuous moments that can often pass us by if we don't take note of them. The other thing about this article that I am really proud of is actually what you can't hear, but what you will see if you open up the September issue. You'll see actual pictures of my little girl and me. And for me, that was a really big deal because my wife and I made the decision to not post our daughter on social media. And so to actually convince her and to, I guess, convince myself that it was a good idea to actually publish something that was going to be out there for anyone to see was a big deal for us. And so I am glad in the end that we decided to post photos of her on the article. I felt it was much more personal. And funnily enough, one of the other reasons why I chose this is because of all the articles that I've written this year, it's the one I've gotten the most feedback from because of the way that people connect with it on a personal level.
It will be a cool keepsake for your daughter as well to
I
have
think-
her
I think
first
so.
profile, her first middle cover spread in a magazine.
Yeah, it's very cool. My father-in-law was stoked because he loves his granddaughter very much, and he asked for a bunch of copies so that he could give it out to all his relatives and friends, and they could open it up and have a read. So that was a wonderful thing. Okay, moving on to the next category, and I'll get Zanita to start off with this one. This is, which story in 2025 are you most glad was published in Signs of the Times? Now, this is specifically a story you did not write, but you are glad nonetheless that it ended up in the pages of our magazine for whatever reason you deem. So, Zanita, what story in 2025 were you most glad was published in Signs of the Times?
Yeah, so last year's wrap up, my answer to this question was I don't feel like we've covered the stress of finances and the issue of homelessness and the rising cost of living at all, really. And that was something that I wanted to focus on in the following year. So we had Sally Ann Clark write on homelessness for us, and I thought it was a really good article. She is someone who has experienced homelessness, works in the field of homelessness, and is just super passionate about it. So I loved that article that was titled Homelessness, It Ends With Us. And I thought it was a really just proactive, helpful, insightful article. I often look at people in my town, in my suburb who are homeless, and I think, I got no idea what to do about this. I've got no idea how to connect with them, relate with them. I don't know what they're going through. And I thought that just really gave me a lot of compassion for the people in my own surrounds. And just some direction as to like, what do we do about this? How can we actually help? What is helpful? So yeah, that was one that I was really stoked that we published.
How about you, Jared?
I like the story. It was a cover story, I think in our August edition. I gave God 12 months. I just love when Signs does testimonies. I think we do it really well. The stories are varied, and yeah, maybe I would say even this year we may not have had quite as many testimonies as I would have liked. It'd be great to have a really strong testimony in each and every issue. But Bryce's story, it just had that invitational, interesting element, like the title itself. I gave God 12 months. He basically experimented and tried God out. And I think many people in our communities don't know what to do with God. They've not encountered him before. And this might be a blueprint for them to be brave, to dare to try God for a time. And so I love the way his story came together. Yeah, there's some tragedy, some ups and downs, and he's still on a journey. He's still working through his life story. But to be able to share that, I'm very proud of Signs for the way that we are able to share stories like Bryce's, and to make sure that we continue to do that is awesome, because that I know not everyone's cup of tea is world events or health or whatever the topic may be, but somebody's story, a little bit like Zanita was saying, finding treasure in there, finding that gold, somebody's story can relate to many different people on all sorts of levels. So yeah, for me, our testimonies are a very strong part of our magazine, and I love reading different people's experiences. And that story I thought was a really good example of a testimony that we've shared that made an impact, not just on me, hopefully on many people who were able to read it. We also did a little video, which was really, I thought it was great, looked good on the socials and things, and gave people who aren't just readers an opportunity to engage with his story as well. So that element of able to produce in a multimedia platform, Signs, and I think we'll talk a bit later on, Signs is 140 years old next year. That's huge. But for so much of that time, it's just been print because that was the technology available. And seeing his story, not just in print, but also as video, also as some social media assets, shared in different ways, interacted with by different people who never would have maybe engaged with or picked up the magazine, been given the opportunity to see the magazine, they saw it on social media. So again, another thing that I'm very glad Signs was able to tell that story this year. What about you, Jesse? What's your most glad story?
So many to choose from. Mine is Cambodia's Sex Industry, A Child's Worst Nightmare by Lynette Lounsbury. This I chose because it probably had one of the biggest impacts online on our website, sciencemag.com. A lot of people read this one, and particularly online, and I think it also speaks to, as we've already discussed in this episode so far, some of these social issues that we can take a strong stance on. When we are talking about something so dark and so overwhelming as the child slave and the sex industry in Southeast Asia, it can often be incredibly depressing. It can be debilitating. What in the world can I do? And I think one of the great things about this article is it highlighted the way that Asian Aid is doing a really great work in Cambodia to help. The Night Care program is doing such a wonderful thing in helping some of these kids to get off the street, to be safe, to shine a light on the darkness of the sex industry, but also to empower some of the women that are caught up in this industry and to give them some more agency and hope that they can get out. One of the most important articles I think we published this year, and I think one of the most important ministry partners that we have in Asian Aid. So, yeah.
It's awesome to reflect on the things that are going well in the world and the things that are being done about the horrific situations.
Yeah.
Whatever they are, because I think often we do focus on this is happening. Oh no, but there is hope. But this is like, there is hope. Things are happening.
Yeah.
This is awesome.
Yeah.
And the fact that it was, it's being done by Asian Aid in such a non-judgmental way.
Mm-hmm.
Like, so many people don't want to support these women because they're like, well, that's morally wrong.
Yeah.
We should shut down that industry. It's causing problems. Asian Aid's solution is to help the children and protect the children. One, so maybe the cycle doesn't continue, but two, so that the women can make better decisions to, as you said, potentially even get out. But even if they don't, it's like, well, we'll look after your children anyway because, lives are important and lives are at stake.
The Southeast Asian sex worker industry is so devoid of dignity, and Asian Aid really is providing some dignity to these women, which is so important.
Yes.
Okay, now this is the final category, and this is the regret/looking forward category. So you can answer it one of two different ways. What's the article you wish you wrote in 2025? Or if it is a bit more easy to answer it this way, what article do you hope to write in 2026?
How about you go first, because I know you've already started making headway on this, which is amazing, and I'm a bit envious, but hit us off because you're in the running.
All right, so I'm going to try and keep this brief, but this is an article that has turned into a bit of a series. It's going to be starting in early 2026, so yes, it is underway. I have recently become fascinated by the idea of AI, humanity, and transhumanity. And what I mean by that is the AI future that we are seemingly hurtling towards. What does it mean for us and our view of who we are as humans, our place in the cosmos? There is a frightening report that I think everybody should read. It's called AI 2027. It's produced by a bunch of very knowledgeable researchers, ex-executives of big AI companies. And it predicts not a prophetic future, but a blueprint for what the future could look like if AI goes the direction that a lot of these tech bros are hoping it will or warning it will. The sort of interaction between AI and humanity and what it means to be human is a very murky one. Now, into all of this is a bunch of philosophers and thinkers who are trying to push back hard and say, actually, this future that we're hurtling towards, it is deeply immoral, it is deeply anti-human, and actually what we need to be doing is returning to a much more simple, more grounded, more earthy, and much more spiritual, because a lot of these philosophers are Christians. There's one particular called Paul Kingsnorth, who's written a recent book called Against the Machine, and it is making waves currently. He's been interviewed by the New York Times and a whole bunch of other influential outlets, talking about this return to nature and this sort of very visceral reaction against the AI future that seems to most of us inevitable. So this series that I'm working on is going to be an exploration of that. What is this future that AI is laying down for us? And as people of faith, as a person of faith, or, you know, particularly for our audience, if you are a person without faith or skeptical faith or interested in faith, what does Christianity have to offer? Does Christianity fit within this AI future, or does it critique that AI future? And what does that look like? And how do we think through what it means to be a human?
Jesse sent me this article, AI 27, and next to it said, you might want to book in with your therapist after you read this.
Wow.
And I just put it to the end of my tabs because, you know, I have many, and I was like, I'll save this when I'm feeling brave. So I'm excited to hear the hopeful perspective you put on it, because I think I am one of those people who anyone starts talking about AI, I just freak out and kind of shut off because I'm like, I don't really want to know about it. I'm just going to wait till that comes to deal with it. So yeah, can't wait to read the series.
It's good stuff. It's heavy stuff, but it's good stuff.
It's wild to me that there's sci-fi movies, you know, the anime Ghost in the Shell is coming to life. It's but yeah, does the Bible have answers? Well, so far in my experience, the Bible has answers to many mysterious and difficult questions of how humans should live and do live. I'm excited to read your series and find out what you've got to say on it.
It is currently in progress.
Excellent.
All
Very
right.
exciting.
Hit us, Jared.
Go for it.
Oh, Zanita's thrown it to me. I was going to throw it to you, Zanita. All right, I'll go next. Good question. What did I hope to write? Well, unlike Jesse, I've already finished an article for 2026.
Ooh.
It was on prayer.
Brag.
Is on prayer.
Nice.
And it's a bit of my personal testimony, my wife and I, and our journey with prayer. Prayer has been very key for us, very important. And so I wasn't thinking of that as such when I was thinking of this question. I guess maybe I said this last year as well. The marriage and relationships and the minefield that is sex and some of those things, you know, we did have a good article this year with Michaela Mathers about the birds and the bees. There was a podcast episode on that one as well, which I didn't listen to all that long ago, Jesse. I had a bit of catching up of my episodes to do, but I got that one and I was like, yeah, that's great. I got myself a book. It was called The Sex Talk You Never Had, because, you know, many of us probably grew up, didn't necessarily get a great introduction to this from our parents, or it was a very awkward one.
I still remember mine. It was a 5-minute conversation on the kitchen counter, and that was it.
My mom gave me a book. She said, read this book. And it wasn't a great book. It was really, whatever. So most of it was like from school science classes. It was the mechanics, but not the relational aspects, not the challenges that come along. So I still think there's space for science to talk about that. We do relationships, well-being, health, all those sort of things. I think that's one that I would like to tackle at some point in the not too distant future. I know we've done the Michaela piece and that was great, but I definitely think there's so much in that space. So much of our lives revolve around relationships and the challenges, marriage, and marriage is such a a rich and varied and difficult experience. You know, there's so many different facets to marriage. And yeah, I know I have gotten help and need help some days in my marriage, and it's good to reflect on some of these things so that we can find articles, find hope, find experts to speak into things that can help our readers with their relationships and their marriages as well. So I think that's probably a space where I'm thinking Signs could do something upcoming.
Yeah, similar relationship kind of trend. I think friendship is something that I really value personally. And when I kind of look out into the world, there's this obvious loneliness epidemic that we talk about all the time. And I just feel like friendship is something that's obviously existed for forever and been talked about for forever, but I feel like it's something that consistently gets knocked down in our priorities, especially as we get busier and we get older. And like you guys mentioned, you have kids and you buy houses and all these things happen. And I think it's obviously so hard to maintain consistent friendships and community, but I think it's something that is so important and so beneficial to our lives and our well-being and everything else. And I think when I look at the landscape of podcasts or articles or books on friendship, a lot of it is like how to recover from a friendship breakup. it's not this encouragement or this like advice on how to actually improve in our current day and age when things are hectic, and like how do we form friendships that last? How do we heal friendship conflicts? And that's something that even though I think about it a lot, I still find myself like, this is hard. Like even more so as I get older and learn things. So I think that's something that I've wanted to write on, but there's so many different angles. There's so many. I feel like I could write a whole issue on it. And we've had a few articles on it, but I don't know. There's something that I feel like is missing when I look at it.
Maybe a book deal. Zanita.
Maybe.
Get that.
Get me on that.
Get that friendship. Fill that hole in the market.
Yeah.
Jesse, it sounds like there's a lot to look forward to next year, and I'm excited to read not only your article series, but Zanita's friendship piece and more on relationships, etc. But next year is also very significant for Signs of the Times. I believe, and it's hard to sort of verify this because different people are claiming different things, but I think at this point, Signs of the Times is the longest continuously running printed magazine in Australia. I believe that's correct. And the milestone that we will tick off in 2026 is 140 years. That's exciting.
Yeah, it's pretty wild to think that the very first issue of Signs of the Times was released on January 1886. Insane.
You think about how much the world has changed in that time. You think about the fact that when the Adventist Church decided to start in Australia, they had the foresight to go, we need to send a printer. They sent like 6 people, 8 people, and one of those people was a printer. They wanted to publish, they wanted to share, and they were like speaking one-on-one to people on the street. That's one way to spread the message, but a tract, a piece of paper, a magazine, a newsletter that we print can be read by multiple people, and that's where Signs started. It was the first thing they decided to do in ministry. And so to celebrate that for us, that's a super exciting thing. So I think we'll see some content in the magazine. It'd be good to refresh everyone's memory what the history of Signs is and where we've come from. So, Jesse, excited about that? What can we look? What are you looking forward to for next year? Do you think?
Yeah, ever since we have been anticipating this, I have been jumping into the archives and reading up. If any are interested, the Adventist Encyclopedia online is a wonderful resource where you can get a lot of great information that has been cited and sourced. And so, I've been jumping into the archives, looking to the past of what Signs of the Times has been, what social issues it's been speaking to, and sort of the look and the feel and all of the individual editors and the editorial staff who have had an influence over the magazine over the past couple of years. And Jared is literally correct in what he was saying before about Signs of the Times being almost the first thing that the very first Adventists did when they arrived in Australia. They arrived in the middle of 1885 from America, just a few people. Signs of the Times came out 6 months later, the very first issue, and it has been going ever since. So in some ways, Signs of the Times it's synonymous with the Seventh-day Adventist Church in Australia. The very first edition was produced in a bedroom in North Fitzroy in Melbourne. And soon it was moved to a little printing press on a little street corner there. A few decades later, moved to Warburton in Victoria, where it was produced until, about a decade or so ago, when it moved up to here in Sydney. But it's still printed in Warburton, and it has been for almost 100 years, I suppose.
Over 100 years.
Over 100
Warburton
years.
celebrated their centenary, I think, 10 or more years ago. Yeah. So it's produced still in Warburton, I guess, production-wise,
yeah.
but we do the editorial things from our Sydney office.
Yeah.
But Warburton's still very much a big part of, getting the magazine out, getting it distributed, helping us to manage subscriptions and all sorts of things like that. So we're very grateful that we still have that partnership. And they're called Signs Publishing,
Yes.
named after or with the magazine. So it's always the name of the publishing house has sort of followed the name evolution of the magazine. It was Bible Echo and
Yes.
Signs of the Times, and it was the Bible Echo publishing house. Once they dropped the Bible Echo part of their name, they sort of switched their name at some point to Signs Publishing. So the Signs Publishing Company has always published the Signs of the Times magazine.
Yeah.
And I think that's a really neat partnership that has continued for, over a century now.
Yeah. So look, that's just a small teaser. Plenty more to come next year. I'm excited to jump into the history of it, share that with all of you fine people. And not just look to the past though, but to look to the future and to dream about where God might take this particular magazine. It's been 140 wonderful years. There's been ups and downs, but God has been really faithful in keeping the vision of those early Adventists alive for this magazine to be a resource for talking about what's happening today in our current world, the good and the bad, but with a lens of faith, a lens of hope. And I feel personally incredibly grateful, but also that weight of responsibility of being a caretaker in this season for this ministry. And I'm excited to see where God will take it in the next 140 years. Maybe, if he doesn't come back.
Well, let's hope.
Got to at least get to 150.
Let's hope he does.
Let's hope. Let's hope. Yeah. Anything from you, Zanita?
Well, look, I was just in New York recently, and the New Yorker magazine was celebrating 100 years, and I was like, "Well, that's good on you."
Yeah.
But
Good for you, mate.
we've got an extra 40 years on you. But walking around New York, there was flags everywhere, tote bags everywhere, celebrating their 100 years. So yeah, I don't know. We got to celebrate big. I think
You get
let's
some merch.
light up Sydney with flags.
Yeah.
It's like
Light up
100
Sydney
years.
with tote bags.
That's cute.
yeah.
We've
Great
got
accomplishment,
140.
but not to brag.
100%.
So no, I think it's awesome. It's huge.
Well done, team. It's been a good year.
All right. Well, hey, thank you very much for listening. I would love to chuck it out to you. What was your favorite article of 2025? Or perhaps favorite podcast episode, or perhaps both? And if there's anything that you'd like in particular for Signs of the Times to look at, attack, or explore in 2026, please let us know.
We love your recommendations.
Absolutely do. For everything Signs of the Times, head to sciencemag.com. You can read our current issue digitally or via a print subscription there. Get it for a friend, get it for a family member. Christmas is coming up, so please, if you haven't already, get into the latest issue, and we will see you in the next episode of Science Radio. Goodbye, Zanita.
See you later.
Goodbye, Jared.
Have a good one.